I recently published a video about why people in K-12 education are often evaluated by someone who has never held their job. Part of this is because it would be impossible to find a school administrator who's done all the different jobs of the people that they're evaluating. It's just not realistic from a staffing standpoint and due to the large school administrator shortage in this country. So what I wanted to talk about today is, what do we do in order to overcome this problem? Because it's not going away. We need to figure out how to make evaluations more manageable for those principals and other administrators doing them, as well as make them useful for the staff being evaluated so they can get access to good quality coaching and get feedback on their performance. So there's two ways that you can think about your job if you are in a K-12 setting. So this applies to you if you are in a related service provider role, like a therapist. So if you're an SLP, a psychologist, social worker, OT, any of those related service provider roles, and you are evaluated by the administrator in the building, or maybe somebody from your special ed co-op, for example. Or this could apply to you if you're a teacher in a school, especially if you are someone, if you're in a specific subject matter, you're teaching a certain content area and your administrator that's not what they taught. So how do we handle those things? So when we think about our jobs and we think about what we need to do our jobs well, we can kind of separate them into two areas. There's your knowledge of your specific discipline and your ability to apply that knowledge. So for me, I'm a speech pathologist. I have specific skill sets that make me a good speech pathologist, that make me able to provide good therapy when I have a group of students in front of me and I am in that direct service provider role. So that is one part of my job that's going to impact how effective I am. But it's actually just a very small part of my job. There are a lot of other things that I would need to do if I were in a school setting. And this is true for other disciplines as well. So there's your subject matter expertise, and then there's your leadership skills. So leadership skills could include all those different soft skills that you have to do in order to be a good team member. So your ability to problem solve and think outside the box about different ways to provide services. So some of those big picture things. Are there ways that you could be in the classroom more or do some coaching and consultation? Are there ways that you could provide support for those other people in your building? How well do you work as a team member and just your basic communication style and how you're communicating with the other people on your team, how you're communicating with the students, how you are handling behaviors that come up? That's something that really everybody has to think about on a school team. It goes beyond your specific subject area. So all of those other things, those leadership skills, how are you showing up as a team member in that building and really in that role? So when we think about those two things, we can actually separate out who can give us feedback on those types of things. So your administrator, if they are interacting with you and they are seeing the way that you're acting around your coworkers and how you are at work, they can actually evaluate those leadership skills, even if they didn't hold your job, even if they don't have specific subject matter expertise related to what you do. They can still evaluate those types of skills. And I would argue that if you don't have them, even if you are really good in your discipline, it's going to be hard for you to be successful in that role. So those things are really important and are really going to impact how successful you are in that team. We can't just focus on our subject area. We have to think about how we fit into the bigger picture. So your administrator can definitely evaluate you on those things. That is a crucial part of your job. So focusing on those types of things. And yes, they may pull in some feedback on some other things that come up when they do your evaluation, but really focusing the conversation around those types of things that they can evaluate is a way that we can make those activities useful for both parties. Now, let's say that you're in that situation and you think, okay, this is great. My administrator can give me feedback on how I'm working with my other team members, but what if I want some specific feedback on my therapy techniques, for example. Well, what I did when I was in that situation, because I was a speech pathologist in the schools and I had a building principal who evaluated me. One of them, for example, had a physical education background, so something very different from what I did. So she could tell me how I was doing, how I was interacting on that building problem solving team. She was able to give me great feedback there, but she couldn't get as specific on my speech pathology skills. So what I did was that I would either go to the other speech pathologists in the building, and we would plan days where we would just come in and do kind of guest appearances in each other's therapy sessions to give each other peer feedback. And we also had a speech coordinator eventually who was in a supervisor role, and really she wasn't evaluating us, but she was there to provide support. And there were a couple times I asked her to come observe me as well so that I could get some more specific feedback. So that wasn't required of me, but it was something that I wanted to do just so that I could make sure that I was getting feedback on specific things related to speech pathology that maybe my principal wasn't able to give. So when I separated it that way, I felt like I was supported, and I did think that the way that I was being evaluated was fair, because I think that both of those two things are really important. So if you think about it that way and think about your subject matter expertise and your skills as a leader and as a team member, that can help you to kind of divide up who you can go to for what pieces of feedback, regardless of who is officially assigned to you as your evaluator. So I actually had a great conversation on the De facto Leaders podcast on employee evaluations from the principal's perspective, especially when there's a situation where there are people with super specific clinical backgrounds that are being evaluated by a building principal. How do you handle those? What's that like from both perspectives? So it is episode 109 of the De facto Leaders podcast. It's a great conversation to just help us understand where we're at, some of the challenges, because I think that is one of the things that we need to understand if we're going to figure out a solution. So again, De facto Leaders, episode 109. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts, or you can find all of the episodes at defactoleaders.com.